as Tethakoukas has pointed out, it could increase it 5 to 10 trillion more in 10 years. Obama, at the same time of adding this crippling debt, said to us, if you recall, I'm not adding a dime to the national debt. Now, is he ignorant about the distinction between deficit and debt, or is he just? I have no idea if he's just a major propagandist on that point. But the point is, he was adding 10 trillion to the debt, more than we'd had since the nation began to the time that he took office, or almost as much. And so it's so preposterous and so unbelievable. And we have these entitlements that if we don't reform and restructure, as Ryan says, we cannot stave off bankruptcy. Ryan says it's the most predictable, preventable national financial catastrophe in world history. And Ryan's presented a plan. I put it in some detail in Chapter 6 of my book and contrast that with Obama's non-plan. And Ryan's plan is relatively painless. It gets us there over a period of years. The Democrats don't even challenge that it'll work. They just say, Geithner just said under cross-examination by Ryan during the congressional hearings, we just don't like your plan.
Well,
because it doesn't take care of seniors or middle-income people, which is an absolute lie.
Yeah, it's an absolute lie. But no. But I was going to say you forgot what he said. You forgot what he said right before that. We don't have a plan. We just know that we don't like yours.
No, that's what I did say. Yeah. We don't like your plan.
That's but I mean, but anyway, emphasis on we don't have a plan.
So Ryan says, okay, what are we, 2 years old here? Give me a plan. I don't care if you don't like. See, so Obama says. But he says wrongfully, fraudulently, that he inherited this mess from Bush. We can go into that. We don't have to. But let's assume he did. Wouldn't a reasonable adult say, we have got an unbelievable, staggering amount of nation-killing debt. I inherited it. I'm not going to use that as a license to do more. I'm going to cut it in half. I'm going to cut it down in force. I'm going to get rid of this deficit and ultimately work on the debt. No, Obama says, oh, boy, he rubs his hands together. I have an excuse to set the new deficit baseline at $1 trillion. Now when I spend $1 trillion plus a year in perpetuity in deficits, I can claim I'm the most frugal president in 60 years. And lo and behold, that's what he said. Because he said that the new baseline of deficits is $1 trillion every year. So this is so unsustainable, and it is so preventable. And Obama is steadfastly standing in the breach, preventing Republicans from any plan at all. He convened this bipartisan budget commission, and it wouldn't even go to their meetings, much less adopt their plans, which were very anemic as they were. But he's done nothing, and he's standing in the way. If he's reelected, we cannot. Ed, if he's doing this when he faces reelection, think about what he'll do if he perceives himself to have a mandate.
Oh, I totally agree with this. I guess it's because I'm optimistic that he's not going to win re-election, and I think
Me too. So that's all I wanted to say. When I saw your blog post, absolutely, all my stuff has to do with him being reelected. I do not think he's going to be reelected. I think he's going to be beat handily. I'm a little bit worried about Mitt Romney and how he's approaching some of this stuff, and I know you're more sanguine about him than I am, but I'm 1,000% for Romney. Because I'm 2,000% against Obama, and I think Romney's a decent guy and everything, but man, he's tied in knots over this ObamaCare record, Romney-care record thing he's got, and that's a little problematic for us on the major issue.
I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that, and I think that's sort of baked into the cake with Romney. We knew that going in. He did a pretty good job of handling it in the primaries, but I think that they just really want to focus on the economy. I know the Wall Street Journal just ripped them to shreds for that, but I actually think that that's the right strategy. Focus on the economy, focus on spending, focus on deficits. Now, your book,
I agree.
And we are almost out of time, which is a real shame because there is so much more in this book than just the economy.
I just got a call. We can go for a few more minutes if you want
good,
to.
Excellent.
By the way, Ed, I think we totally agree. It's a question of how we're framing this stuff. The thing about that I want Romney to do, though, it's not just the economy. I was thinking about this morning in anticipation of this interview. We can talk about the economy all we want and bread and butter and people unemployed. And yes, it's the worst recovery since World War II. It's the longest period of extended unemployment we've ever had, or we've had in the last 50 years, and we have to hammer that. But I guess I'm I am obsessive compulsive over the financial integrity of the United States,
yes,
even more than the economy. In other words, we will go bankrupt in just a few years. This isn't something figurative off in the future. So therefore, I want Romney to talk about his willingness, his full-blown intention to restructure entitlements. I don't care how scary he thinks, or how vulnerable we are to fear-mongering from seniors and all that. They've got to articulate that position. I talked to Ryan's people when I was doing this book, because Ryan had gone out and supported Romney. I said, have you guys vetted him on this entitlement thing? Has he embraced your plan? And I'm not going to talk about any inside baseball. I was lucky enough to get them on the phone. And they assured me that Ryan is cautiously optimistic that Romney will embrace his reform plans, or some semblance thereof, and restructure entitlements. But do you not agree with me that he ought to focus a little bit on that, or do you think it's a strategic mistake for him to focus on the debt issue?
I think,
I mean, not that they're separate, but they are separate issues that are intertwined.
They're related, but they're not the same issue. And I think he needs to talk about it a little bit more. I think you're right about the scaremongering, but here's the thing: they're going to scaremonger anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're going to scaremonger anyway. These are the same people that showed a Paul Ryan lookalike pushing grandma off a cliff in a wheelchair. I mean, these people are going to be shameless about this, and then that's politics. I'm not saying that that's different in any other way than other politics. Other people conduct politics. I've seen nastiness from all sides in my years being involved or observing politics. Mm-hmm. But so it's a mistake to pull punches because you think that people might be mean to you as a result.
I know, and I think Romney errs on that side. His tendency is to be cautious, and we're already seeing that in this campaign, and yet he was fierce and vigorous in the primaries.
Well, I think he's been fierce.
He recapture that here against the Democrats?
I think that's overstated, though. And here's why I say that, is that for 2 months, people were praising Romney. He was in the face of the Obama campaign.
That's true.
It was really just this one thing that Fehrnstrom said on either Sunday or Monday. I forget what it was. And all of a sudden, you've got the Wall Street Journal, rending its clothing. And I mean, look, it was one statement. I kind of understood what the strategy was, and the strategy made some sense, which was to let other Republicans go on and on about the mandate being a tax, and for him to just attack Obama on the hypocrisy of it by having, by playing the, Donald Verrilli's argument to the Supreme Court in juxtaposition with Obama's insistence that it wasn't a tax, and just say these people are lying to you. And I could understand that. It's just that Fehrnstrom, I think, fumbled the ball on CNN. On MSNBC with Chuck Todd by saying the mandate is not a tax. And I think I understand why people got unhappy about that. But I think there's been some overreaction to this.
I think it's partly because of Romney's reputation as a flip-flopper and
exactly.
Tentative, and all that is resurrected when one little misstep occurs.
Well, I think people are just really sensitive to the fact, David, that, we were really unhappy with the fact that McCain wouldn't go after Obama hard. And so now we are really, and for that matter, 1996 with Bob Dole, too. You remember that? He was running the gentleman campaign against James Carville. Even at that time, you could take 3 guesses as to how that was going to turn out. And so I think that conservatives are really sensitive to the fact that you have to be fighting on all fronts at all times. And when that doesn't happen, or when you have one misstep, you get a huge reaction from that.
And I agree with you. Intellectual honesty leads me to take both positions. And that sounds a little bit ironic, but are counterintuitive. But in fact, it was not a tax for purposes of the court's review. But but they should not be allowed to have it both ways. In other words, I understand Romney's play. Here we are criticizing Roberts because he exercised judicial activism to rewrite this bill as a tax. So we conservatives are definitely saying it was not a tax for that purpose, are we not?
Yes, we are, because otherwise it's unconstitutional.
We want to also saddle them with the idea, he said it was a tax. You guys argued in part. On one day it was, on one day it wasn't, with the anti-injunction thing. So you're going to have to own this. It's a tough issue. This is this isn't just Romney nuancing. It's this whole issue is fraught with nuance and confusing nuance.
I completely agree with you on that point, David. I do. And Romney shifted gears yesterday on July 4th in an interview with CBS saying, well, that's what the Supreme Court says, so, Obama's going to have to decide whether this is a constitutional tax or an unconstitutional penalty. And I think that's a good tactic to go forward with. I think you had a momentary stumble there with one advisor just getting a little bit out of the lane. I think that this is going to be probably not well remembered by the time Labor Day rolls around, because that's when.
No, I totally agree with that. I'm not that worried about that one. I just don't want. I don't know how he's going. See, I don't think Obama is a good debater. I don't think he's as brilliant as people think he is. But I do think they can load him up with at least 20 pre-planned questions to get Romney way off his game on ObamaCare. That's the trouble in those debates. I don't think it ought to be the main issue either. But in the debates that they have, he's got ammo he doesn't even need a teleprompter for. And we just have to deal with it. That's just one of the problems we face.
It's one of the problems that you always face. I mean, you're never going to have a perfect candidate. It just never happens. And Romney is not perfect, and we're going to be dealing with that for a while. But I agree with you on Obama's ability to debate. I mean, he was up against John McCain, who's, not a great debater. And there's a lot of reasons why 2008 worked out the way it worked out. But I think we're already seeing very clearly that Obama is not the great orator of our times as he was sold in 2008. And I expect that the debates are going to go much differently in 2012. There's plenty more in the book, The Great Destroyer, David. You talk about Obama's war on culture and values, Obama's war on the disobedient. I love that. I mean, and that's part of the Obamacare tax thing. I mean, the whole idea of this is that the federal government can tell you what to do, and if you don't do it, they'll tax you for it. I mean, that's an unlimited intrusion on choice. I mean, what the list of things that you can apply this to is endless. I applied it in firmly tongue in cheek to gun ownership. We should tax anybody who doesn't own a gun.
No, it's really true, and it's why I believe, without knowing for sure, that Roberts caved, because he had to strain to get to the result that he did.
Yeah.
He even said, "My theory is," what? Are you serious? My theory is, when he's writing his opinion. In other words, he knows that recharacterizing this Commerce Clause case as a tax case opens incredible doors for now for expansive Congresses to say, to characterize something as a tax and virtually compel behavior. And they can't compel it, but they can punish you with a punitive tax if you refuse to do it, which will now be denominated as a tax. And this includes penalizing somebody for non-action and action and that kind of thing. It's different than it used to be, and it opens the door. And I'm really a little bit disappointed in so many conservatives who are unconcerned about this, who say, well, yes, we can go after him. It gives us more political ammunition, and it'll galvanize us. And I even said that in the column. Yes, it will, but that doesn't detract from what it does, the damage it does to the Constitution.
I completely agree with you on that. I mean, I think that I think that people who are arguing that this was a covert win for conservatism and judicial restraint are misguided in thinking that the weak argument, the weak Commerce Clause argument, is somehow overridden by the fact that they just opened up wide the gate on tax power, so you don't even need to use Commerce Clause rationales any longer.
Yeah, so what if you limit the Commerce Clause? You don't need it anymore. I mean, right. We're talking in generalities, but yes, I mean it's very problematic, and also I find these arguments really pedestrian, almost conspiratorial, when they say Roberts did this on purpose to give Republicans a victory in November.
No,
gosh, I'll criticize him, but that's just sinister.
Yeah, no. I don't believe that either. I believe he reached the result that he believed in. I do. I don't want to impugn Justice Roberts' motives at all. I think he's wrong.
Let me say this. I don't think he reached the conclusion that he really agreed with in his heart of hearts. I think he convinced himself. I think he deluded himself. And I think he's an honorable guy. I'm just saying, I think he got beaten down so much by the liberal pressure that he probably never experienced in his life, unlike my brother who's been taking arrows for 20 years, that he caved. And that's the only conclusion I can come to, because he originally was on the other